My solar panels caused a neighbor meltdown. The first time I noticed my neighbor glancing over the fence, I didn't think much of it. I had just installed solar panels on my roof, a modest setup, nothing flashy, just enough to cover most of my electricity usage. I'd been excited about finally making the switch, imagining the long-term savings and the small step toward cleaner energy. My family thought it was great. My wife even joked that we were now officially green heroes in the neighborhood. But apparently, not everyone shared that enthusiasm. It started small. Notes on my door, passive-aggressive comments when we met outside. "I hope those things don't ruin the look of the street," he'd mutter, staring at the panels with a scowl. I tried to brush it off, assuming it was just a minor nuisance. Then came the calls, first a polite request, then increasingly urgent demands that I take the panels down because they supposedly reflected too much sunlight into his windows. I was baffled. The panels were angled toward the south. How could they possibly cause such a problem? Then, one afternoon, I saw him pacing in his yard, waving his arms at the sky. I thought he might be exaggerating until a few neighbors mentioned that he'd called the homeowner association and claimed I was blinding him with my roof. That's when I realized this was escalating beyond petty complaints. What started as simple resentment was morphing into full-blown hysteria, and I had no idea what would happen next. I tried to reason with him, explaining the panels didn't even reflect toward his house. He laughed it off, then muttered something about legal action under his breath. A week later, a lawyer's letter arrived. My neighbor had retained counsel and claimed I was violating property rights by installing the panels. They alleged that the glare from my roof was a hazard and demanded immediate removal. My stomach sank. This was absurd, but it was real. The letter even hinted at seeking damages for mental anguish caused by my energy-efficient choices. I read it multiple times, hoping I'd misunderstood something. But no, it was clear. I was being sued, over sunlight, over progress, over 3 small panels I had worked hard to install. I called my own attorney, trying to wrap my head around the situation. She was as stunned as I was. "You're being targeted for going green?" she said. "We'll fight this, but be ready. People can get irrational, and the courts sometimes don't reward common sense." I nodded, feeling a mix of disbelief and frustration. This was my life now: legal notices, angry stares from my neighbor, and the uneasy feeling that something as simple as clean energy could spiral into a full-scale neighborhood feud. The tension in the neighborhood grew almost immediately after the letter arrived. I noticed other neighbors starting to whisper when I walked by, glancing toward my house as if waiting for scandal to unfold. My children asked why Mr. Harding, the neighbor next door, seemed angry all the time. I tried to explain, in simple terms, that sometimes people just don't like change, even harmless change. But inside, I was simmering. I had never imagined that installing solar panels could make someone feel personally attacked. Over the next few days, Mr. Harding escalated further. He posted a notice on the HOA bulletin board, warning residents about dangerous reflective surfaces and the supposed hazards of my panels. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Neighbors who I had considered friends started avoiding me, saying things like, "You need to settle this quickly," or "Maybe just remove them, it's not worth the trouble." I felt isolated. My attempts to reason with him in person only seemed to anger him more. He accused me of ignoring his rights and disrespecting the neighborhood's aesthetic. One afternoon, I returned home from work to find a group of contractors hired by him walking around my property, measuring angles and taking photos. They claimed it was for documentation, in case of legal proceedings. I tried to ask what they were doing, but they waved me off, saying it was between him and his lawyers. I felt a mixture of frustration and helplessness. My family watched in disbelief from the windows as strangers examined our home like we were criminals. I decided it was time to fight back, but carefully. I started researching solar panel laws in our state, reading about property rights, nuisance claims, and glare regulations. I documented everything: the orientation of the panels, the angle of sunlight, the actual reflection measurements, and even recorded videos from my backyard showing that the light never hit his windows directly. My attorney advised me to keep everything professional. No confrontation, no yelling, just evidence. It was exhausting, like preparing for a war I never wanted to fight. Meanwhile, the neighborhood gossip mill churned relentlessly. Social media posts appeared, showing blurred images of my panels with dramatic captions suggesting I was a menace. I felt my reputation slipping, my family under a microscope. Every car that drove by felt like a jury. Every neighborly smile seemed suspect, all because of a few panels on my roof. I realized then that what started as a simple dispute about sunlight had grown into a psychological battlefield, one where logic had no place and hysteria ruled. I received the court summons on a Monday morning. The envelope was thick, official-looking, and terrifying in its finality. My heart raced as I read through the documents. Mr. Harding had filed a formal lawsuit demanding not just the removal of my solar panels but also monetary damages for mental distress he claimed he suffered daily. The numbers were absurd. Tens of thousands of dollars for what? Sunlight? I felt disbelief mingled with anger. How could a simple home improvement turn into a full-blown legal nightmare? The first hearing was scheduled within a month, and I knew I had to prepare. My attorney suggested collecting witnesses, expert opinions, and any proof that the panels didn't pose a hazard. I reached out to my neighbors, some supportive, some reluctant. Mr. Harding, meanwhile, had clearly marshaled his forces. He had printed diagrams, hired a glare expert, and even obtained photographs showing my panels in early morning sunlight. Some of them were harmless angles, but in court they looked convincing. On the day of the hearing, the courtroom was small and tense. Mr. Harding arrived with his lawyer, looking triumphant, while I sat with my family, trying to keep my children calm. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, called the case and asked us to present our sides. Mr. Harding spoke first, his voice confident and measured. He painted a picture of suffering caused by the panels, exaggerating the glare, claiming it disrupted his work and daily life. The court reporter typed every word as if it were gospel. When it was my turn, I handed over the evidence. Angle measurements, photographs showing no reflection into his windows, and even videos taken from his property line proving the panels caused zero glare. I tried to stay composed, explaining that the panels were fully compliant with local codes and posed no real threat. My attorney added technical details about solar panel standards and property law. The judge asked pointed questions, scrutinizing Mr. Harding's claims. For the first time, I sensed a shift. The exaggerated story might not hold up under careful examination. After a tense pause, the judge requested a short recess to review all the materials. In that moment, I realized how fragile Mr. Harding's case was. His anger, his obsession with perfect sunlight, had blinded him to facts. I also saw the impact of preparation, methodical evidence, calm presentation, and clear documentation. The courtroom felt charged with anticipation, and I understood that this fight wasn't just about panels or sunlight. It was about truth finally confronting hysteria. When the judge returned, the atmosphere in the courtroom was electric. She began by acknowledging the seriousness of Mr. Harding's claims, but her tone was firm, almost skeptical. "I have reviewed the evidence presented by both parties," she said, scanning her notes. "And while I understand your concerns, Mr. Harding, the facts show that the solar panels on the defendant's property comply with all local regulations. There is no measurable glare affecting your windows." Her words hung in the room like a verdict yet to be finalized. Mr. Harding's face went pale. He shifted in his seat, whispering to his lawyer, who frowned and muttered something under his breath. I tried not to smile, even though a small wave of relief washed over me. For months, I had endured his escalating complaints, the social scrutiny, the legal threats, and now, finally, the truth was on my side. The judge continued, detailing how the technical reports, angles, and witness statements clearly supported my case. Each piece of evidence that I had meticulously gathered was now unraveling the foundation of his hysteria. The judge paused, then addressed him directly. "It seems that much of your distress stems from personal frustration rather than any actual hazard. The court cannot grant damages for subjective annoyance unsupported by evidence." Mr. Harding stammered, trying to object, but the judge cut him off politely yet decisively. It was clear, the courtroom was no longer a stage for his exaggerated grievances. It had become a place where facts prevailed. After a brief adjournment, the final decision was read. Not only was the lawsuit dismissed, but Mr. Harding was ordered to cover a portion of my legal fees. There were murmurs from the audience, neighbors exchanging glances of surprise and disbelief. My attorney nodded at me, a quiet smile confirming what I already felt. Justice had been served. For the first time in months, I felt the weight of stress lift from my shoulders. Exiting the courtroom, I noticed Mr. Harding standing alone, his expression a mix of anger, embarrassment, and disbelief. He couldn't meet anyone's eyes, and the energy that had fueled his campaign against me was gone. Meanwhile, neighbors who had watched from the sidelines came up, offering quiet apologies and congratulations. It was vindication not just legally, but socially, a clear message that irrational hysteria could not dictate reality. Back home, the neighborhood felt different. The tension that had clung to every interaction seemed to dissolve almost overnight. My family hugged me, relief and quiet laughter filling the house as we removed the legal notices and put away the evidence folders that had dominated our dining table for weeks. My children asked if the sunlight problem was over, and I explained that sometimes people let their anger grow too big over small things, but facts eventually come out. Mr. Harding never apologized, but his presence changed. He stopped leaving notes, ceased his online posts, and avoided interactions altogether. The energy that had fueled his crusade against my panels seemed spent, leaving behind only awkward silence. I realized that what mattered wasn't his recognition, but the fact that truth had prevailed without us stooping to petty arguments. The panels remained, quietly producing energy, and each time I looked at them, I felt a mix of pride and relief. Word of the case spread slowly. Some neighbors confessed they had expected me to fold under pressure, yet here I was, standing firm. Others quietly admitted they had enjoyed the spectacle but had underestimated the absurdity of the situation. It became a subtle lesson for the street. Persistence, preparation, and calm adherence to facts could counter even the most irrational opposition. In the iOS end, life returned to normal. The panels on my roof glistened harmlessly in the sun, a symbol of small progress and common sense. My children played outside without fear of judgment. My wife cooked in the kitchen without rolling her eyes at another dispute, and I resumed simple routines with a newfound appreciation for tranquility. Mr. Harding occasionally glanced over the fence, but his eyes no longer burned with anger, only resignation. Looking back, I understood that this episode was never really about sunlight. It was about control, perception, and the fragility of ego. I had learned that staying informed, documenting facts, and keeping calm in the face of irrationality were my best defenses. And sometimes, the most satisfying justice is quiet. The truth stands, panels intact, and life goes on.